couple of years ago, I did a video for you guys where I installed a foot pump sink in my SKOOLIE. Still one of my most popular videos. I'm weird, I know. I was trying a little harder to be funny back then, and I don't know, it makes me laugh, but kind of flies in the face of a lot of the wisdom of YouTube that the gurus tell you, you know, the best practices, things not to say. I have not done this before. I've learned a lot since then about making videos, about the YouTube game, and about my sink. So today, I'm going to show you the foot pump sink upgrade that I'm doing as part of my big bus rebuild. And I'm going to enlist the help of 2019 Mary to do it.
Maximalist Minibus with Mary and Captain and you. Get on the bus!
The way a foot pump sink works is pretty basic. You have a foot pump, tubing, and 2 water containers, and that's all you need. Oh, and yeah, and a sink and a faucet. I unfortunately kind of set myself up by installing my sink, my beautiful Talavera sink, in a piece of furniture that has kind of a shallow space underneath it. I had to find water jugs that were shorter. I got this piece because it fits over the wheel well and it was crazy cheap, but you'd probably be better off either building something or to find like a cabinet with 2 doors on the bottom, no drawers, that you can take the back off of and fit it over the wheel well. That way you'll have a lot more space. I didn't do that. I came across these jugs, which fit in here just fine. One is for the water that's getting pumped through the faucet into the sink. One is a backup so that swaps out when that one's empty. And the third one is to catch the gray water, the water that comes down the drain that you're done with. Now, I don't use this sink for drinking water. I'll show you my drinking water setup at some point. I use it for washing. Wash myself, wash the dishes. There were a couple of design problems in the original install, and the biggest one had to do with that gray water. These jugs are a great size, like I said, but it's hard to fit it in and get it out because of the drain coming down. So I'm going to reconfigure that a bit. For the drain hose, I'm using the same setup I used last time. It's a dryer hose. I couldn't really find anything else that really was any significant improvement, and this is a cheap solution. My plan is to cut it much shorter, and instead of trying to go through the neck of the jug, I'm going to spin it around and use my hole dozer to cut a hole that the drain can come down into. When I put in the pump and hosing originally, I used this clear tubing, and it worked out well for a little while, but because it has to bend at an odd angle to get into the water supply, it kinked up. And vinyl hose has a memory, so once it kinks in a certain spot, it's going to fold there every time. It's just going to collapse in that same spot. At first, I thought I'd replace it with this heavier braided vinyl hose. It's still vinyl, still has a memory, but it's a lot stronger. I didn't have anything else on the table, so I bought some. If you don't have these extreme bends, then I actually like the clear because you can see the water coming through the tubing so well. You can get them both on Amazon. There's links in the description, but also if you're near a Home Depot, they sell both kinds by the foot. Then I found out about food-grade silicone tubing, the kind that people who do home brewing of beer use. Silicone tubing is really resistant to temperature variation, and it seems like it kinks less, and it's also much more flexible, less rigid. Silicone doesn't have a memory, so if it kinks and you unkink it, it's not going to keep folding in the same place. I'm going to try that. If you have really keen eyes, you may have noticed that this is not the same pump that I had before. The other one has a blue bottom. This one is gray. It's been installed for almost exactly 2 years, like almost exactly. My old foot pump sink video came out, I think, 2 years ago to the day. Happy anniversary, honey! I'm in a situation here in Massachusetts where there can be kind of extreme temperature changes, and frankly, I haven't really paid enough attention to that. I should have drained this whole system for the winter, and I didn't. So that could have done some damage. The pump is an Amazon purchase. It was the least expensive foot pump I found on there. And my original thought was I was going to buy another one of the same pump, but then I thought maybe I should go for the brand name because this one's a cheap knockoff of the Whale Baby foot pump. The original Whale Baby foot pump was only $10 more, so I figured what the heck, I'm just going to go for the original. And I'm glad I did because this is completely different. I mean, it looks pretty much identical to the other one, but it's very different. The weight is different. It's a lot heavier. It's just a much sturdier piece. Let's test it out. I'm going to use this plastic tray so that we can test it, and if there's a leak, we'll find it and not get water all over the place. These stems here where the hoses mount, you see there are arrows showing you which is which. This one's pointing in toward the pump, so that's the inflow, and this side shows an arrow going out, and that's where we're going to connect out to the faucet. I got 10 feet of tube and I cut it into a long piece and a short piece, and I'm attaching my long one right now. Going to attach it to, boy, it really collects dust on the outside. And then this hose is going to go into the water supply. So I've got this little bucket. It's already got water in it because it's actually catching water from a leak that I have over by the door. So I'm going to push this with my hand, and you can see the water moving. Huh. Okay, I'm not sure you noticed, but I actually just did this test exactly backwards. I put the intake hose into the bucket, outgoing hose into the big jug, but it doesn't really matter. It's the transfer of water that we're testing, and you can see that it worked. Okay, now let's test the sink drain. Okay, that is leaking from the top right under the lock nut. Let's see what's going on. So you can see how the stem is kind of skewed to the side, and I think that's because of how everything was jammed in there before. I can't get it to go straight now, but I don't think that's what's causing the leak. Oh, I think I see why. There's supposed to be 2 of these silicone rings, one that goes up here at the top of the drain and one that goes under the lock nut, and the one that goes under the lock nut is missing. I'm going to swap this one from the top and put it under the lock nut because that should solve our leak. I'll just have to deal with the top one later. So you see there's a little bit of a dribble coming down the drain because the silicone ring is now missing from the top. The point is it's coming down the drain. It's not coming out of any other hole. Now we're ready to connect to the faucet. This is designed to take a threaded pipe. So in order to attach flexible tubing, we're going to need to install this barbed adapter. And that just screws in here. You can see I got a lot of Teflon tape on there because now I know what it is. And I'm going to screw it in there as far as I can and ratchet it on there by hand as much as I can. Then I'm actually going to take a wrench to it, give it a couple more twists. Make sure it's really on there nice and tight. Now that I've gotten that ready, I can pull the hoses up through the holes, which you might notice at this point also have grommets. And I'm going to clamp the output hose onto the barbed connector and just give it a hit with the driver. Now let's test it out. So I'm going to step on the foot pump. The hoses are filling with water. And all that's great, but it's leaking. And it's not leaking from anything that I can fix. It's not leaking from any of my connections. It's leaking from the swivel on this hose that connects the tubing to the faucet. So I'm going to have to go to Home Depot and get us a new one. So, as I have done so many times during this rebuild, I headed off to my happy place, Home Depot. Okay, I'm not going to shoot in there because they always think I'm such a weirdo when I do that. Okay, I'm back from Home Depot, hooked everything back up, so let's give this another whirl, see what happens. And I'm stepping on the pump again, water's flowing again, it's going into the faucet and into the sink and into the drain, and nothing is leaking. There doesn't seem to be a single leak anywhere. Okay, it's awesome. I really hope you're going to join us as we reveal the rest of the rebuild. And I'm going to let 2019 Mary take it. Science has proven subscribing makes you smarter, liking makes you stronger, and commenting makes your hair shiny. You want those things, don't you? Subscribe, like, comment. You could have it all.